Hello, welcome to Understanding SGA, Substantial Gainful Activity. I'm Michelle Fassler, Vocational Services Team Leader at Places for People, and I'm also a Certified Benefits Specialist. What is SGA? Social Security Administration uses the term substantial gainful activity to describe a level of work activity and earnings. To be eligible for benefits, an individual must be unable to engage in SGA. So if work is substantial, it involves doing both physical or mental activities or a combination of both. And for work activity to be substantial, it does not need to be performed on a full-time basis. So often a person might say, Social Security thinks I have to work full-time, or I can work 20 hours, when in reality, they're looking at a combination of these things. So gainful work activity is also important to note that it's work performed for pay or profit, or work of a nature generally performed for pay or profit, or work intended for profit, whether or not a profit is realized. So that means Social Security could look at a person's activity if it was a volunteer job and assess that the value of their work is substantial gainful activity. So it is largely be considered a dollar amount, but it is all of these things. The last thing to remember is that final SGA determinations are made by Social Security Administration. So as I said, there is a dollar amount associated with substantial gainful activity. Here's a chart of substantial gainful activity amounts since 1975 until 2017. If you've worked with substantial gainful activity before, you know that usually this amount goes up a little bit every year, and that there's two different amounts, one for individuals who are blind and one for individuals who are non-blind. So, SGA and employment. So there's two different things to think about. One is for claimants, people who are applying for benefits. Often people think that if they're applying for benefits, they can't work. But actually, substantial gainful activity applies for people who are applying for benefits. So people can work before they are awarded benefits. Since an individual must be able to engage in SGA, they have to consider both the type of work and wage they are earning. And for beneficiaries, SSI recipients will receive SGA determinations periodically during continuing disability reviews while employed. And then SSDI or CDB, so all of the Title II recipients, must have multiple phases in the return to work process. So after an individual has exhausted their trial work period, SGA becomes more important. So SGA and employment, work incentives are available for SGA determinations. And again, those are different for the two different programs. In Title II or SSDI and CDB, there are higher SGA levels for beneficiaries who are blind. People can get impairment-related work expenses to help with their SGA and subsidy. In Title 16 or the SSI program, there are impairment-related work expenses and subsidy that is only available at the initial application. Here are some examples of deductible and non-deductible impairment-related work expenses. So what an impairment-related work expense would do is help to lower the amount of countable wages to get people under the substantial gainful activity amount. And this wouldn't happen every month for a person. It would only happen in cases of SGA. So let's say a person needs to take a cab to work because of their disability, not because there's no transportation, but because of their disability. And let's say they're earning $1,400 a month, and they spend $300 a month on the cab, then they would be able to take that off of their wages, and now it would look like they earned $1,100 a month instead of $1,400 a month, which if we use 2017 as an example, then now they would earn $1,100, which would get them under SGA. So you can see here there are some other examples, and then some examples of things that are non-deductible. Subsidy is another work incentive that can also be frequently used to help people when SGA determinations are made. So employers can subsidize an employee's earnings. Sometimes it's paying different amount of wages or helping people with additional breaks, different amounts of job, a different type of job than a non-disabled employee. A good example of this is, let's say a person is a bagger in a grocery store. And at this grocery store, usually baggers have to also go get carts. But if the individual has a certain disability, the grocery store manager is not going to make them go get the carts. And getting the carts is usually 25% of the job. So even though they're not getting carts, they're still getting the same wage. So really, they're getting paid for 75% of the work. So the employer could say, well, yes, but they're only doing 75% of the job. So Social Security would send a form to the employer who would put that, and so Social Security would count 75% of the wages. That's a subsidy. Here's some other important ways you can help an individual with SGA. Income averaging does not require any other assistance. It's not a work incentive. This is available for everyone. If you have someone who works in a job, this is often the case of retail or food service, where hours can range from month to month. You might have one month where there's, someone had more hours or the restaurant was open more. You can ask Social Security to do income averaging over 3 months. So let's say they went over SGA this month, but months around it wasn't. So they can average those incomes over 3 months. And that's one that often individuals will forget to ask for themselves. Make sure that we report all wages in a timely manner. So sometimes, particularly with SSDI, a claims rep might tell someone that they only need to report wages every 3 months, which is nice because they don't have to remember to do it. But sometimes then their wages are estimated, and that can cause problems. So if people are reporting their wages on time and keeping in contact with their claims rep, it can help with things not being estimated. Help people in keeping receipts if they are using work incentives. Everything has to be verified. So keeping any receipts if they're planning on using work incentives. Helping people recognize if they are receiving subsidy at work, if they're getting, extra breaks, or if they're doing that where they're doing part of a job, if they're open to having their employer fill out those forms for Social Security, helping people recognize the supports that they are receiving. And last, staying aware of those annual changes to the SGA limit, making sure that we know when it goes up. So if people do want to be able to work more, we know that that amount has increased. So just to review, SGA is an important concept, and whether or not a person can work at SGA levels determines whether or not Social Security considers them disabled. And it's more than an absolute number. So often we look at the number and we say, tell a person they can work under it or over it, but Social Security does look at more than that, if whether or not a person can sustain that amount, so it is a little bit more than that. SGA can be reached with both paid and unpaid work. SGA is important for both beneficiaries and claimants. Work incentives are available for SGA determinations, and while staff can assist with identifying appropriate work incentives, SSA makes all final SGA determinations. More information about SGA can be found online in the Social Security Red Book.